right, so I've got all my pieces cut out here. Here's all the pieces, and then I've got my card base. I'm gonna go ahead and start by layering up what's gonna go in the front of the card. So the silver is the back layer. This rose gold will go on top, and then the black will be on the very top of that. And I am using some Pop Dot adhesives from the Dollar Tree. This is only a couple of layers, so I think using popping these layers up wouldn't be too terrible. Whereas if it was more layers than that, I would be a little more cautious to use foam because then it may not fit in the envelope. So I'm going to go ahead and just start by putting these in the corners here. And because this is like a foil paper, regular glue, liquid glue, is not going to work as well, which is another reason I'm using this foam on here. It's going to stick a lot better. And then I'm just going to put a few kind of here and there in the middle where I can. Let's see, we may need to cut some of these up a little bit so we can fit them in the other spots. All right, I've got some here that are already pre-cut up that I've cut before, and I'm going to add those in some of these smaller spots just to help hold the dimension up. I'm just going to kind of stick them on the center of these letters here. All right, that should be good. And then I'm just going to lay this layer right on top of it. You can always put them on the back of this layer. You can always put these on the back of this layer. I just happen to put them in spots that I know will be covered with this layer as well. So we're just going to get all these peeled up, and then we'll go ahead and stick down that layer on top. Some people like to work kind of front to back. It's just whatever your preference is. I like to layer mine up so I can see as I'm going. Peeling all of these off is probably the most tedious part of this entire process. Okay, now the outside layers, top and bottom, will match up perfectly, so you can always just stand these up and let them kind of sit together like that. These papers are have a little warp to them, so this may not always be the perfect option, but that actually worked out pretty good. And then I'm just going to kind of go around to where my pop dots are and just try to press those areas down. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm going to go ahead and this time I'm going to put it on the back of these. I am going to go ahead and pop this one up as well. So I'm just going to put these larger ones in the corners. And then I've got some half ones here that I'm going to put further down on here. I just want this well supported. But you also want to make sure you're putting it in a spot where it's going to be disguised. And then we'll put one more down here on this little part. Okay, we'll peel these up, and again, I can just stand these up, lay them on top of each other, and then they should match up standing up next to each other. So this is just a super quick but really intricate looking card that doesn't take long to put together. And if you have the right cut settings, the majority of the little inner pieces in between all these little tools did come out on their own. I didn't have to do a ton of weeding after I pulled it off the mat, which was really nice. That's why it's important to make sure you test cut. I did probably 3 or 4 test cuts on this foil paper since I haven't used it in a while. I hadn't written down what my settings were. All right, that looks good. Again, I'm just gonna stand these up. Before they touch each other, I'm just kind of standing them up, lining up the sides. Making sure they're gonna look in the right spot. And then I can go ahead, lay it down, and press these in. And the other nice thing with this foil is if it's not quite right, you can actually pick this off the foil without causing any damage, which is super nice. I don't do a ton with foil, but this was a really fun project. Okay, that looks good there. And then the last thing you have to do is I kept the D's. You have to keep the inside of these letters. You're gonna lay those on. So there's a couple ways you can go about it. You can either just eyeball it and see where it goes, or you can go ahead and stick the D back in there and then you know exactly where this is gonna go. So again, I'm just gonna put some pop dots on the back. Peel these off and get this stuck down. And I'm using this D in here as a guide to get this inner in the right exact spot. And then you can just take that D out. There we go. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with the A and then also with the other D. So I'm just going to take that, lay it in there. I can just go ahead and lay both of these in here. And I'm using basil paper for this top layer, so it's got a little bit of texture to it. And I just want to make sure that I've got the texture on the correct side to make sure everything's going the right way. And that makes it a lot easier too to make sure you've got the cuts on the correct side when it's got this last little one I can stick under this end. When it's texture on one side, it's easier to tell if you're putting down the correct side of the paper. Let's see, that might be too big. Got this little tiny pop dot here. That might work. Just to get a little extra oomph at the top there. Okay, we'll get this lined up. So I mean, these letters can kind of fall in a little bit since everything else is layered around it. But it's not too difficult to get them lined up, and then you go ahead and just put in the inners, and then you can just kind of pop that other piece back out. Okay, that looks good. Put my D back in. And then again, I'm just gonna put a couple of these kind of half pop squares on here. Peel off the backings. And then we can get this positioned in here. And then just pop the D back out. You may need to use your tweezers or something to get that letter out of there. You can always do that as well. Okay, so there is the front. Now, what we can do, let's get all this out of our way. So I've already went ahead and folded my card base. And I think I'm just gonna glue this one down. because I'm afraid if I pop this up, then there's going to be too much on there. And maybe I should have done this in black as well. I think that would have looked a lot better than probably just white. But you can make that whatever color you want. But I'm gonna go ahead and just use some glue on the back. You don't have to glue every little piece. So I'm just gonna do a couple of small spots in these bigger areas. The rest of it, I'm okay with it just floating. And then I'll get some good amount of glue kind of down around the thicker parts. Try to get a little bit in here and some of these thicker areas to help hold things down. Try to get a little spot of glue on these sides over here as well. And I'm not going overboard with the glue, just a couple spots here and there. All right, and that should be enough. And this is going to be a top folding card. And this front is the exact same size as the card. So this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm just going to get those edges lined up. And then I'm just going to press. You may need to just flip that over and press it down. And then on bonus, you've got these letters on the you can also use these again on the inside if you want, to just kind of spice up the inside of your card. And then you've got lots of room here to write your personal message. So there is your Layered Tools Dad card.